Hey guys, it's Swift here. Um, as you know, I make metal fight videos, so I thought it would be good if I had a guest on who's very experienced with this format and this generation of Beyblade to talk about the current state of limited format. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. My name is Cake, and I have been playing Metal Fight Beyblade for about 10 years now. It's been my main format, and you may or may not have seen me on like the WBO Discord or in other places talking about Metal Fight Beyblade.
Cake is one of the very experienced ones, and he interacts a lot with us on the WBO Discord, which is really nice. Um, So yeah, do you want to explain what limited format is?
Yeah, so limited format is a Beyblade format exclusive to the World Beyblade Organization, which the whole idea is that there's power creep in Metal Fight. There's it's the big power creeps are with 40 the 40 series, which increases the size and weight of everything and makes everything more powerful. And then again with 0G with the synchrome system, making everything again bigger and more heavy and more powerful. Uh, but then that leaves a whole bunch of parts which are competitively useless in standard format where there's no real bands. Uh, but then towards the start of Metal Fight, there was very little power creep for a pretty long time. And so what limited format does is it bans everything right down to right before maximum series, so Hell and Basalt, where power creep really started to take off. And then that way there's a huge variety of parts that are all at about the same power level and are all legal. So you can have a very diverse format with a whole bunch of different Beyblades, and it's very easy to get into.
Yeah, and I think that limited format is probably the best metal fight format you could get into just because the cost of entry is pretty affordable. It can be expensive if you want it to be, but the nice part is if you don't want to spend that money, you can be just as competitive without breaking the bank. So
Yeah, it's very accessible and very popular because everything's pretty level playing field and there's a lot of ways to get into it. So, as I said, with the idea is to ban a lot of the much more powerful metal wheels, especially down to right about where power was before the maximum series introduced a bunch of power creep. So all 40 wheels are banned with exceptions. All synchromes are banned, but you can combine a chrome wheel and a crystal wheel. And Hell and Basalt are both banned because they're way heavier and more powerful than pretty much everything that goes before it. And then there are some other exceptions. But so the handful of exceptions of Metal Wheels are so Hasbro released in Metal Fury a whole bunch of hollowed out remake versions of all of the 4D wheels, or most of the 4D wheels. All of those, with the exception of the Scythe remake, are legal because all of them are hollowed out to be about the same weight as everything before 4D. So the thing that a lot of people hate Hasbro for making those hollowed out remakes, those actually are all pretty viable in, or at least most of them are pretty viable in the format. Um, then other exceptions, the Libra pre-hybrid wheel system wheel is that is banned. It's very very heavy, good for defense and stamina, and decently aggressive, so it's also good for attack. The Jade 4D wheel is legal because it is the second lightest of all 4D wheels, and it has a very 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 vulnerable underside, which really limits its ability to do things outside of low track defense. So it's relatively harmless, despite the fact that it's a 4D wheel. And the Dark Knight or Ronin Crystal Wheel is banned because it has pretty good attack on its own, and it also turns any other Chrome Wheel into a left spin Beyblade, which is pretty useful. Uh, aside from metal wheels, the there are a couple band tracks and one band tip. The band tracks are all the big fat disc tracks. So you've got E230, big, heavy, tall disc track. You have SP230, which is like E230 but worse. You have BD145, and you have SA165. All of those are banned because they're huge, great for defense, great for stamina, and they block out a lot of attack types. And then the one band tip is Rubber Defense Flat, which is just tied with all the other rubber tips for the best defense type tip in the game, and also has LAD to make it a real threat in opposite spin.
Yeah, RDF is definitely a very versatile tip. Okay, so then obviously a lot of people think, including myself, have the opinion that limited format is currently the healthiest format in Metal Fight. Out of the two, there is, I guess. But how do you think that the current meta is?
I think it's pretty healthy. I think that the fact that it's been stable without any significant ban list changes in years kind of goes to show that people generally like the format as it is, and that it's a pretty healthy and stable format right now. Well, I mean, maybe not necessarily stable. There's still plenty of combo development happening even this far in,
Which
but
is great.
it's definitely a healthy format, and people are still excited to play it.
Yeah, like from my personal experience, before I joined the Midwest competitive scene, I was one of the people who really thought that 230 should be banned and limited. I just looked at it as being super annoying and just something that was spammed almost. But after going to my first tournament and now various tournaments that I've been to, I've come to actually appreciate 230. It is easy to deal with if you know it's going to be there, and I honestly think that it adds a lot of variety and just part availability for limited because the height variance, which is one of the main things that I like about Metal Fight.
Yeah, for those who don't already know, 230 is really important for the limited meta because in general, with no big disc tracks in the format, being shorter is much, much, much better in for almost all combos. It's really good to be short when you're defending yourself because it makes it harder for your opponent to make good contact. It's really good to be short when you're a stamina type because you're more stable, and it's really good to be short when you're an attack type because you can get underneath your opponent and lift them off the ground. But 230 throws a wrench into all that because 230 is too tall for a lot of short combos to deal with. And so that creates a bit of a height rock, paper, scissors. So you have short combos beat middle height combos, middle height combos beat tall combos, and tall combos beat short combos. And even though the 230 is kind of annoying because it does counter a lot of things, it's a really important part of the metagame because if we didn't have 230 threatening all the short combos, nobody would ever play middle height, and we'd just have everybody throwing 85, 90 height combos out all the time because there wouldn't be any reason to go to middle height.
Yeah, which would really hurt the diversity of limited, which is the whole basis of limited.
Yeah, that's an important thing is like the limited ban list isn't just about banning combos that are overpowered. The whole goal of limited is to have as many different kinds of combos be viable or good as possible. So that way the format can be as diverse as possible and you can have as many avenues to make cool combos and get into the game.
Yeah, for sure. And there have been talks recently of I know that the last change to limited was the gravity change, right? Um,
I think that's right.
yeah. So if you guys didn't know, in limited, um, no matter what match you were in, you could change the rotation, the spin direction of gravity at least once. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then, recently, within the past 6 months, I think, um, a new change happened to where you have to announce the spin direction of gravity at the beginning of the match, and you cannot change the direction.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really good change because a lot of people have the opinion that gravity is overpowered. I never thought it was overpowered. It's really good at a lot of things, but it that's just why it saw so much use. I think is just it's super versatile, and I do really like the new ruling that it can only change or that it can only go the directions that you announced at the beginning.
Yeah, because like the one spin direction change rule for gravity wasn't much of a restriction because all you do is pick one direction when you start, and if you get it wrong, then you switch to the correct direction after you lose one match and you just go to town.
Right.
Uh, gravity being able to dual spin is annoying, and it can be really obnoxious to deal with on certain combos, but limiting it to needing to choose one or the other still leaves it as a pretty flexible combo, especially in like deck format where you can go back to it multiple times. But it limits its ability to just okay, I always get to fight you in my best spin direction.
Um, but moving on to some other topics, there's been some talk lately of people wanting both Libra unbanned, specifically Mold 3, I think. I'm not sure how important that was in the conversation. And there was also talk of Dark Knight being unbanned and limited. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so on the Libra thing, Mold 3 was versus other molds was a consideration. Um, again, if you don't know already, there are three molds of Libra. Mold 1 is the first one, obviously. Mold 2 is similar to Mold 1 and then has some reinforcements like most mold changes do. And then Mold 3 is a combination, more reinforcements, and also a nerf, because Mold 3 has two gaps added to the underside of Libra. It's also the heaviest, but those gaps uh, give it a significant weak point underneath that has a lot of recoil, and so it's a lot easier to KO if you hit it from there. Um, and so the idea was that maybe mold 3 is the weakest and therefore is, the least of a balance problem. I think from the WBO also did some tests comparing the different molds, and mold 3 wasn't that much better or worse than the others, and like it was noticeable, but it wasn't a matter of mold 2 being broken and mold 3 being like really easy to deal with. It was uh mold 2 wasn't a huge balance issue, it seemed. So in general with Libra and Dark Knight, these two combos have been legal and banned at varying times in the history of the format. And I think they're definitely the most borderline of the parts that are currently banned. Uh, Other parts that had been legal and banned, Gravity has been on both sides of the ban list. The 4D Wheel Omega is actually lighter than Jade, and had been unbanned at one point, but it's very good for attack, and so it is currently banned. And then the Scythe Metal Fury remake is also currently banned, but was unbanned at one point. Um, there are also the some of the rubber defense tips, rubber ball, rubber semi-flat, and rubber sharp. Those were all banned at one point, but they've been unbanned. Um,
Interesting.
with
I didn't know that the I knew that Rubber Sharp was, but I didn't know about RSF.
yeah, yeah, or I might be wrong. I might have been rubber ball and rubber sharp. Someone
Okay.
can correct me on that. But anyways, those defense tips weren't that big of a problem. The ban was more to keep people from spamming defense early on in the format, I think. Um, But so with ban list changes on limited, a big thing with limited is that in theory it's really supposed to be a pretty flexible format. There shouldn't be that much resistance to making ban list changes in general. We do have a very like nice uh, legal list of combos right now. So I guess that's why nobody's really been pushing that hard for ban list changes until recently, just because people are, for the most part, content with how things are right now. But I think uh, we shouldn't be too resistant to making ban list changes because that was never the intent for the format. Was to maybe be a little bit more experimental in the sake of having a fun format. Um, I think we should still be careful not to legalize too much stuff that might completely break the format, uh, but at the very least, unbanning things, especially something as marginal as Libra and Dark Knight, is uh, potentially could breathe a bit of fresh air into the meta. Because Libra and Dark Knight are both bans less from being utterly broken and more from they compete with a lot of other parts that are already in the game. Again, it's about maintaining diversity in the metagame. So if good part, like I would define viable, good, and great parts. A viable part is any part that you can get wins with. So like you can get wins with like Ray or with Rock or something, but uh, they're not very good parts because they have a lot of weaknesses. They win against a smaller group of things. A good part, on the other hand, is good versus a lot of things. And so, like, if we're looking at attack parts, that's like uh, Vulcan or Screw or something like that. Um, those are good parts. They have like really good upsides. Like Vulcan is pretty high stamina. Screw's pretty heavy, and then you've got powerful attacks on those parts. And then a great part would be something like maybe Pegasus or Lightning El Drago, which hits a whole bunch of things really hard. Um, has a lot of favorable matchups, and maybe calling them great is a generous statement because what I would really call great would be things like Libra or Dark Knight, where you have a part that, in the case of Libra, has really good stamina, has a lot of weight, so it's pretty good defensively, and it also has enough recoil that it can be pretty aggressive and KO things too. So that gives you a huge amount of stuff that you can beat, whether it's through resisting their attacks, outspinning them, or just KOing them. And it makes the part very, very versatile, and it competes with a lot of other parts like Earth or Bakushin or Jade for those roles. Versus a good part like, say, pre-hybrid Leone. Uh, it's got attack power, it's got okay stamina, it's got decent defense, but it's not like exceptional at any of these things. It's not challenging like several other combos at their own roles. Um, and that's where kind of Dark Knight really sits at. Is it it is only a crystal wheel, but it does let you put that crystal wheel on a whole bunch of other parts. The most obvious problem with Dark Knight is currently Banded Wivang is one of the best attack types in the format, or one of the many very good attack types in the format. And Dark Knight allows you to have Wivang, which is doing the most of the work of the combo, with the added benefit of greater vertical reach, so it can hit like 230 from a lower track.
I think Jay was able to get KOs on 230 with 90.
Yeah, yeah. Like it can get KOs on 230 from really low tracks, which, as I said earlier, was a major point of 230's balancing of the format, is that it's supposed to beat low stuff. Um, you're supposed to have to make a trade-off between middle height is killing 230 really consistently, but you start to have problems with low height. Well, if you have a combo that can kill stuff from low height, uh, a low height attacker is going to have a lot better results versus other low height combos like the defense types that are supposed to resist it. Um, so you can have like a Banded Wivang combo, move it to a short track, put Dark Knight on it, and now you can still hit the same stuff that you were hitting before, but from a lower height where you have better results versus other combos. And
Plus the added benefit of equalizing, of course.
yeah, yeah, and you can get some cheeky wins if you want with equalizing if you're lucky. Um, so that's what makes a great combo, is something that, or a great part is something that fills several roles at once, or really does threaten to outclass in some degree other parts. Um, and so the goal of limited is to have as many good options as in combos where you're like, where I guess you could debate which one is the best. You can have a lot of opinions on, oh, I like this one because it does this and this, or I like this one because it does these other different things. Like people talking about their favorite attack types is the big thing, for example, or different flavors of defense or stamina or anything else. Um, but if you have one combo that stands out just a little bit from everything else, then people start to drift towards that combo. And then you see it in winning combos all the time. And then people start getting upset like, oh, everybody's just using Libra, or oh, everybody's just using Gravity, or oh, everybody's just using Dark Knight. Um, and then that's when you start getting, calls for banning things. Um, so in some ways, it's almost more of a perception issue. Um, I don't think that inherently there's anything wrong with bringing Dark Knight and Libra back into the format. I don't think they stand out too much. I think it's just a matter of, are they going to fairly or unfairly dominate the metagame to the point where people are stopping using all the other good options?
And that is one thing that I also wanted to talk about, which I've talked about before, um, which I never want to discredit any of the past testings and stuff. But obviously, limited format has really come a long way in like just new combos, different techniques and stuff. So I feel like it would be pretty cool to be able just to test Dark Knight and Libra in current day. With where Bakushin on Metal Flat is going crazy and people are using Jade A230. I think it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think overall the discussion on Discord is, from what I've seen, has been maybe too hesitant to just go out there and say, "Hey, we should just do this." I think I don't know. I think people are a little bit afraid to say that or to take action on getting it unbanned, or to just I don't know. Or maybe it's not necessarily that, but it's just an attitude of like, oh, we can't get this changed. But the whole point of limited is to have a fairly flexible ban list so that way things can, adapt to the metagame, and keep things healthy. And I think even if we make an experiment, even if we legalize Libra and or Dark Knight, and then it goes horribly wrong and they're overpowered as heck and, they're killing everything, then we can just undo it. Like it doesn't
Exactly.
take
Yeah.
that much work to fix it. And if nothing else, it'll be an interesting experiment and people will be excited and play more Beyblade because of it.
And
Like,
if I'm not mistaken, Dark Knight hasn't been unbanned the same time as Gravity. Am I right?
I think that might be right.
So I also think that that could be an interesting dynamic too. Um, Obviously, adding another left spin contender would probably make Gravity worse. So it's
Yeah.
it's something that because I think it was Junction who was talking about how they've never been unbanned at the same time. So obviously, testings with those two being in the mix hasn't really happened.
Yeah. And I think also a really big deal is local metagame, which, because I kind of think that part of the reason why Dark Knight had its moment in the sun where it was pretty dominant might be down to some metagames at the time being very 230 oriented. And because Dark Knight is so good at butchering 230 combos, that would disproportionately make people afraid of Dark Knight or want to use it because the current, thing to do is to use 230. And nowadays, with people using a lot more like short, or at least within the Midwest meta at the very least, we see a lot of middle height attack and short stamina or defense stamina. And neither of those combos, well, I guess middle height attack would have some problems with Dark Knight, but uh, short stamina or defense stamina is going to be pretty resistant to Dark Knight, uh, or at least it's going to threaten a lot of the more spicy versions of it, or like the more weird and jank versions of it. if you just do a conventional attack type, you might be able to get some KOs that way, but like Bakushin is not going to be that threatened by Dark Knight, I don't think.
especially when it's moving 100 miles per hour on metal flat.
Yeah.
um, but I also, maybe I read it wrong, but I think Shindog brought up that a lot of the testing with Dark Knight, it did very good against Libra, right? But it wasn't too crazy against anything else.
Yeah, I think the problem with that conclusion is that a lot of the testing that was done on um Dark Knight, because it was being tested against Libra as the main defensive threat, when you discount all the tests versus Libra, you're left with barely any tests at all.
Exactly.
And so a lot of the remaining, if you look at it that way, a lot of the remaining testing is versus stuff that it would not be expected to be anyways, or versus you with combos that are not very good uses of Dark Knight because people were still learning what the combo did. Um, and the tests that do remain when you go through all that are not really I'm not going to say conclusive because you want more than like one person testing, and by the time that we cut out all the tests that are either Libra or with not very good combos or matchups that are going to be obviously one-sided, we're down to like a couple people's tests, and that's not really enough to draw conclusive conclusions from. But uh, those the remaining tests tend to show that it behaves basically the same as uh, uh, Banded Wivang, but with the extra, a little bit extra reach and a little bit of a chance for outspins. So at the very least, I think that it's pretty clear that Dark Knight directly threatens not Bakushin, Banded as a heart, which is a little bit suspicious, but maybe not a game breaker.
Yeah, I personally think it would be refreshing, honestly, to have Libra and Dark Knight unbanned. Um, I think it would be really fun. I do think one of the issues is obviously when stuff comes into the talks of being unbanned, a lot of people want test events. And realistically, I feel like that's kind of hard, especially right now. There's a lot more burst events going on than Metal Fight, and a lot of people are less inclined to drive all the way for an unranked event, if that makes sense. So I think
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it
that's
just
always the
depends on
problem.
how fast people want the change to happen. Because obviously we could just unban it, and then we could have a limited tournament tomorrow if we wanted with the new unbanned parts. But if we are to have test events, first of all the regions would have to participate in that, and that's saying that they're all willing to, which I'm not sure if they are. Um, but it's just gonna take a long time if that's the way it goes. So you and I have been to, I think, 5 tournaments now, 4 or 5,
Something
um,
like that.
in the past 7ish, 8 months. Um, what were your thoughts on those? Like, what were the combos that you saw, the metas?
Oh, I've been thrilled to be playing in a new metagame with new people uh, because people don't play the same. Like the Toronto meta is not what we've got going in the Midwest. It's not the same as other places like I don't know Maryland. Like uh, it's each region has its own metagame thanks to the different people that play in it, and so the combos that are good or bad can vary a lot depending on where you're playing. And that's just awesome because whenever you go to play in a new place, or if something pops up like the Midwest area has just now, then you get a whole new experience and you can try new stuff, and it's great. So I've just been having a blast playing a bunch of new combos that I hadn't ever played before, learning new combos from people who are just doing totally different things than I'd thought of before. uh, it's fantastic, and that's really what limited is all about. Is having room to do all these crazy things and make ridiculous combos work.
which yeah, it was really exciting for me too. Obviously, I've only been in competitive Beyblade for 2 years now, ever since, or I guess since the summer of 2021 was my first event. But hearing people talk, since it's a decade old game, I did think that all the combos were discovered and that it was gonna be stale. But to my surprise, there's still so much that you can do in limited, and I really do appreciate the players that we have here in Indiana and Michigan and the Midwest, because they're doing really creative things that work. And a lot of people can scoff at it or write it off, but some of this stuff I think would really surprise people.
Yeah, I think calling limited or even standard format solved is very premature. I think that, you know, regional metas can get stagnant, but just people coming at problems from a different angle and running different stuff in different regions means that there is a lot of room for new combos to be found that can then be exported to other regions. Uh, yeah, there's so much room for experimentation left.
Yeah, and it's been really great. I've been like a huge shout out, huge thanks to both Jay and Magic Horse for putting on some really great events.
Yes.
It's how I've become friends with all of you guys, and I think it's really been a really good experience. It's what's keeping me in the hobby, because after I finished my Beyblade collection, I had kind of lost interest, especially after COVID hit, since we had that tournament planned for April, I think it was, of 2020. So
Yeah.
a month after the shutdown. So it's been great that we can get events going, and I'm really hyped seeing all these new combos. I know that the Jade 230 RF combo that Junction was talking about, which even myself kind of thought was going to be horrible. Shindog used it in the Cali scene and won with it, I believe. I think,
Yeah, he went like 5-2 or something
yeah, and
with it.
he said the three out of the top four players had a J, or yeah, right? Three out of the top
Something
four
like that.
players were all using a A230 combo, which honestly kind of blew my mind.
I don't even think that combo is very good, but you absolutely can get wins with it because just that's how limited is balanced. Like the power levels are so compressed that you can do these insane things and it'll work. And that's just awesome.
Yeah, so what I've learned from attending these tournaments is a lot of new players want to come in, and obviously standard is the most appealing format because there is nothing banned, so you can use whatever you want. The issue with that is a lot of these kids come in expecting their basalt or hell combo to do really good, but then they go up against somebody with like Wyving Dragoon or somebody with like Genbul, and it just kind of crushes them. So that's why I always encourage them to get into limited format, because they really don't have to have the best stuff. Like if you don't have a Jade, use Bakushin. It's really affordable. And yeah, like I just think limited format is a great format, especially if you're considering either coming from Burst to Metal Fight, or you want to start Beyblade. I highly recommend limited format, because you can spend what, like probably 40-50 bucks and have a competitive deck.
Yeah, like in standard, you need to chase down multiple copies of expensive, rare metal wheels or other parts uh, to be pretty competitive. And then in limited, like the limited recipe is you go on eBay and you buy a lot for like 50 bucks, and then
Yep.
you have like six different decks available to you of full competitive combos.
Yeah, and obviously, there are some an eBay seller I'm going to say right now is Faifu 2010. I buy most of my Beyblades from him. If you message him on Discord, he usually gives deals. Um, but he's provided countless things for people that I know. I just usually make a list for people, and he has the stock. So it's super affordable to get into, and probably why it's loved so much more than standard, I'd say.